I had a theological crisis of faith on that dirt road as my kids were telling me this fantastic story that I didn't believe. And I went to the leader, and he was very kind to me. And he said, well, one of two things: either 3 demons squeaked by the cross and you found them today, and you captured them and you put them in prison with the other demons, or you maybe don't have a full understanding of what it looks like for God to come and invade planet Earth and confront evil and wanting to bring life. That was my beginning, guys.
Hello, this is Ron Houp, and this is the Edge of the Map podcast. We are happy you've joined us today. Curtis Elliott and I are here in the Go International Studios, and we're kicking off this adventure. We've got a really fun guest for this episode, and I'm going to ask Curtis to introduce him.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. This is an amazing time here at Go International. We're just starting our first podcast, and this is our first episode, and I thought no one is better to come in our first episode than Mr. Clint Bokelman. So thank you, Clint, for taking the time with us. Clint, I think we met in 2006, around that time in Atlanta. I was working for an organization in Atlanta doing short-term mission trip stuff with Joe Lynch, and he was working with you guys, and we just developed this partnership that I got to sort of be on the periphery of a little bit, and was just really impressed with AIM and the things that. So just for our listeners, so they know, Clint has worked with AIM, which stands for Adventures in Mission, for 26 years, and in that time gave all sorts of leadership to that organization, and so we're inviting him on to talk about why missions is more than a trip, but we kind of want to look past, present, and future at this whole topic of short-term missions. And so, Clint, we'll dive right in, and I'll
sort
of go big here with the first question, and that is simply what has missions, the short-term missions model, gotten right? You know, you've been in this world for over 20 years and have helped establish ministries in over 30 countries. What have we gotten right? What has the short-term mission model gotten right? And then as times have changed, we can move further into the dialogue of where we've missed it, maybe. But maybe speak to a little bit about what has gone well from your perspective.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks again for having me on. You're very brave to have me on your first maiden voyage. The good news is this is being recorded, and you could hit delete as much as publish. So, so thanks for having me on, and very passionate about the subject matter. And obviously it's been an intricate part of my life for a couple decades. And so I think I'll try to keep it higher level. I think I'll tell you how I was initially introduced to short-term missions. I was a youth pastor, took a short-term missions trip with Adventures in Missions back in the mid-90s. Went to the interior of Mexico. Had never been on a short-term missions trip before. Had never been out of the country. And I had a co-youth pastor. Well, he was a peer. So he was a youth pastor of another church. He introduced me to this concept of using missions as a discipleship tool for his leadership team in his youth ministry. And so that was the premise that we had as youth pastors of we were going to take our top leaders from our youth group on this missions trip, and it was going to be not only something that they would have experienced of what how God would have him serve them in Mexico, but we really had some very intentional discipleship and leadership training that we were going to be doing with these leaders throughout this 10-day missions trip. And so that's how I was introduced to it, that missions as discipleship really saturated my soul. And then easily tethering that to scripture of where Jesus was on how many missions. You had he took his 70 and sent them out by twos in Luke 10. And so you see this model of where Jesus was using ministry and he was using missions. He gave them authority. And you know the story, they came back with all of these stories. The demons submitted to them. They saw miracles. They saw the supernatural. And then of course, Jesus, then they come back from ministry, they're debriefing it. And then we see Jesus discipling. And he said, yep, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. And yeah, this is very exciting. And there's high fives. Maybe they, got around a campfire and started to sing some songs. And Jesus said, listen, don't rejoice over the fact that you saw power over the enemy. Rejoice in the fact that your names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And so I was able to tether my short-term missions experience that I had when I came into it as a discipleship tool. Our first mission trip that we took, I was introduced to aspects of the kingdom and of God that I didn't believe existed. So we saw demons manifesting in people when we were doing door-to-door prayer ministry, door-to-door evangelism. Theologically, I didn't believe that. I believed that in this dispensation, that at the foot of the cross, all of the demons were contained and confined, waiting for their day of judgment. And here, a little group of Presbyterians came back and they were talking about how this demon manifested in this woman, and they were telling the details of it. I don't want it's too much of a story to tell, but nevertheless, the staff that was with us from Adventures in Missions knew exactly what to do, and it wasn't a big scene. He just said, in the name of Jesus, I command you to let this one go. And then another demon came up, and so the kids were talking about, she started speaking in English and cursing at us, and we're the deep interior. Nobody's speaking English. And I remember I had a major crisis of faith when they were coming back to debrief that this woman was not only set free from 3 demons, but at the end of that last devil being evicted from her, she raised her hands and just started praising God. She was weeping and was giving her entire life to God. Her husband and 2 little kids were on the porch of their little house watching the whole thing. And he comes running up at this point when she's praising, and he says, I don't know what you did to my wife, but me and my children want whatever my wife just received. And the entire household came to Christ. And
wow.
And
that sounds like something right out of the book of Acts, doesn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely.
Household.
Right. And I was talking to Ron earlier about so many of the most amazing instances on the field it seems like it was more in spite of us than what we're actually intending to do. Right. And so I had a theological crisis of faith on that dirt road as my kids were telling me this fantastic story that I didn't believe. And I went to the leader, who actually happened to be the president of Adventures in Missions, was leading that trip. And I said, listen, I got a problem here. And I said, my kids came back. This is the story they told. And he goes, that's amazing. I said, no, it's terrible. I said, the demons were captivated at the foot of the cross. And this is not supposed to be happening today. And he was very kind to me. And he said, well, one of 2 things, either 3 demons squeaked by the cross and you found them today and you captured them and you put them in prison with the other demons, or you maybe don't have a full understanding of what it looks like for God to come and invade planet Earth and confront evil and wanting to bring life. Wow. So that was my beginning, guys, of where I found I had God so packaged and it was so clean and ingestible and dignified, and this was undomesticated. And then I challenged the leader one more time, and I said, yeah, but the woman, they said she professed Christ, and so did her husband and children. And he goes, that's amazing. And I said, but they weren't giving a full, proper presentation of the gospel for her to respond. I had all my kids memorize Evangelism Explosion, and if you know, that's a quite lengthy presentation.
Didn't go through the questions.
They didn't go through the questions. And this lady, like the Christ, and I'm going, this is not right. And so it all started there, and that really has been a story that has been a continuum of all of my experiences through short-term missions. And so I think you can, you're asking, what does it look like? I think every missions organization has their own vision, their own calling. You've got books like When Helping Hurts that comes in and right sizes some of the things that could be devastating in some cultures. And then you've got some missions organizations that they've got a specific line of what God has called them to do in mobilizing people to the nations.
Yeah, we really try hard to emphasize this discipleship as missions. And so I wanted to ask you, I know you've been involved in some of the curriculum that has come out, and just as a trainer with AIM. And so I wondered if you could speak to kind of drill deep into what are you using in discipling besides just the experience of, seeing a power encounter. How are you shepherding people in this discipleship moment on a mission trip? What worked well? What didn't work as you look back on your time there?
Yeah, I'll tell you what didn't work, Curtis, is we had a pretty extensive model and manual that we had put together, and we would take our leadership. Now, this is me now being on staff, not just as a youth pastor, but of really choreographing. By night one, you should be able to go through these elements of either teachings or experiences. Night two, you should be able to. Night three, and so really trying to craft it, and it and as you can imagine, that script came from a trip that there was a tremendous amount of fruit, and God did some amazing things in the participants' lives and in the field. And so I guess we're not the only ones to have ever done this. I think Peter wanted to build, a few shacks on the Mount of Transfiguration and capture this thing, right? And so I guess
choreograph. I like that word, choreograph. We do like that.
Well, it worked, and so we
want to replicate this. Yeah, we want to replicate it.
Absolutely, yes. So I'm gonna put that in the category. This is what we did wrong. Is we tried to write a script and then we were asking God to subject himself to our script. Obviously forgetting he's the author and the perfecter of this thing. And so the part that I think that I'm going to transition, that's what we did wrong, trying to control it, craft it, and then to jump through these hoops. God's not going to be confined by that. And so I think when we did start to iterate and God was teaching us, showing us, is that it's his mission, it's his field. He even told Peter, upon this rock, I'm going to build my church. And so it was just in coming to some seasons of humbling. And again, of looking at the fruit of, did this exalt Jesus? We would, and I remember having a list of questions that it was more important to me to train all of my leaders on, of being able to discern where's God at in this culture, in this country, to easily tether that back to a Henry Blackaby Experiencing God framework of if you've been through that, instead of asking God to bless your plans, which we were amazing at, making plans and then asking, okay, God, now you can just bless it. We'll take it over from here to, we had a major paradigm shift of really taking a posture of, we're going to ask God where he's moving and what he wants to do. And we're going to join him. And organization wide, we adopted that. And that's when we really started to see some things that looked like the Book of Acts on a regular basis, but we couldn't sell it. So we couldn't market, hey, you're going to experience this, or this. It was, experience God as the people in this culture are going to experience God.
Awesome. Clint, that reminds me of a recent story of one of our mission teams where they were in the jungle in two vehicles, and one of the vehicles took a wrong turn. They got separated and ended up in a village that we were with some indigenous missionaries there, and in a village that had made it very clear that outsiders were not welcome. That day, they happened to run into the chief and said, hey, we actually have some medical workers with us, nurses and a doctor. And he said, well, yeah, let him come on in. And so, we had planned to not go near that village because we had not been invited. And, but it's just incredible what can happen when you open yourself to let God lead and make the way. And we what we thought was a disaster, these teams getting separated and lost and so on, God used to break into this village, and people were healed, and there was ministry and great things.
Yeah, love it. I mean, look at the circumstances, Ron, even in that. God, I don't like it that he does this, but so often, just characteristic of your story, he puts us in a position or circumstance. Our options and our hopes of figuring this out in our own devices are extremely limited. And I would say, great story.
Right.
And I would say, man, that's a catalyst of where I think God's just leaning into, okay, let me show you what I do.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
That's amazing.
I loved your testimonial there. I mean, and mine is similar. I just had my world shaken to bits, on a short-term mission trip. And that's what we long for everyone to have their world shaken, by Jesus and what he's doing around the earth. So, thanks for that. That's great.
Sure. Yep.
Stuff.
Yeah. Clint, I wonder if we could switch just a little bit topics to working with leaders in other countries. And one of the things that we're really trying to focus in on is the leaders who are sort of heroic. They're isolated, they're under-resourced, they're doing some heroic things for the gospel in different countries. And what does it look like to come alongside them with teams or projects that sort of are catalysts for the gospel in that area? And just maybe you could speak a little bit to what that relationship looks like for you, working with a local pastor, working with a local teacher, someone in the neighborhood in, Sapazoa, Peru, or inner Mexico. What does that relationship look like to you? How has that shaped who you are?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we had an entire team that was their focus, was managing all of our field partners. And so there was a lot of vetting that would go on. Again, we wanted to, partner with men and women of God that had a reputation, they have the character, they have I'd say probably the fruit of doing what they were called to do even before we ever met them. And then if we were to have never met them, they're going to keep doing what they're doing. So if it's church planting or if it's an orphanage or we wanted to not come in and ask if they could, hey, do you need a building we could build? Or do you need an evangelistic outreach? Or we didn't take an order from them. We said, what's God doing in you, and what's he doing in your ministry? And how can we serve the vision and the mission that God has given you to be able to bring lift to the stewardship of what God has entrusted to you? And so again, just making sure that we've got a man or woman of God that's a person of faith, person of peace. We're looking for that. We're looking for, again, some of the criteria of that the scripture lays out on characteristics of an elder. But again, we're very aware that when I say resources, I'm talking human capital as much as any kind of financial contribution. The thing that I've noticed, and maybe you have as well, I have seen, and this is devastating to me, I have seen more pastors, domestic pastors in Peru, in Morocco, where we come in with amazing intentions to bless, and the success that we bring them is actually a downfall to them. And so being super mindful of that, we were very careful about when we want to bless, okay, what's an appropriate way to bless in this context? We had one pastor that amazing man of God, and he had disciples that were making disciples, and we had a team come in, and you saw the church. We saw the church multiply in 10 days of ministry. People, they were being added to their number. There was a harvest that came in. It was amazing, and God just did an extraordinary thing. And the pastors that were part of the team that was there, they were just awestruck in the fruit of this. And then come to find out, they were so awestruck that they blessed the pastor with a new house and electricity. And then they blessed him with a refrigerator. They blessed him with a vehicle, and overwhelmingly continued this relationship. Well, then this pastor reaches out to us and says, I don't have money to pay for the electricity that the refrigerator requires. Can you help me? And then they're like, where'd you get the refrigerator? And well, this church built me this house, and I don't have money to pay gas for the car. And so they blessed him into this downfall. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
There's a stewardship. When you're talking about partners in the field, there's a tremendous amount of stewardship on anybody that's partnering with them to not put them in a situation where they're going to compromise God's call in their lives. I've seen pastors leave their wives and children because they were blessed financially with some of our.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so that's stewardship is the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We have been thinking we're near a university campus here at our headquarters, and we've been trying to think very carefully about how to reach out to Gen Z and mobilize Gen Z for missions. And there's been some studies done recently about this desire for sustainability among Gen Z, that, I want to make sure that this trip that I'm taking is not creating dependence, for example, is what you were alluding to. So I wanted to back up a little bit and just ask you, like, from your experience, we have found it difficult to mobilize certain segments of the population. Gen Z, for example, we have a board member who talks about a lot about the revival that happened here at Asbury, and he said, Gen Z love worship sets, and having an awesome worship set and an encounter with God is just at the top, right? But in terms of a mission mobilization out of that, he said, I just haven't seen it. And so I'm wondering, like, how do we close that gap? How do we close the gap between wanting to encounter God in a worship service and an environment, but tethering that to a life of mission, a life of outreach, a life of fruitfulness? I don't know, maybe share a little about some of your experience with the latest generation and missions.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I am so optimistic about Gen Z. I am extremely excited about this generation and of what I'm seeing percolate to the surface. And I've got a tremendous amount of optimism for what God's going to do with them. There's things that just aren't important to them that the last 2 or 3 generations it was important. It's a new threshold that I think God is bringing in this generation. And I think that I don't believe it's complicated. I think that at the end of the day, if it's about discipling somebody in having an intimate relationship with Jesus, and Antioch, Jimmy Seibert down in Waco, Texas, Antioch, we were talking about them, and Ron, you got some connection there. All of my kids, when they graduate high school, they head to Waco, and it's because of that ecosystem that is there of discipleship. And when I sent my daughter down there, I was doing some teaching at their school of discipleship with a partnership with Adventures in Missions. And so we would bring them to Georgia to do teaching. So great friendship. And my daughter wanted to go to the School of Discipleship right out of high school to do a gap year. And she wasn't allowed to apply to the discipleship school until she had been in the church for minimum 6 months. She had to be a member. She had to be involved in ministry, and she had to be in a discipleship relationship for minimum 6 months before she could even apply. And so, which I got to tell you something, as her dad, I knew all the leadership, but I'm calling them up and going, hey, this is she's been around the world with me.
She's been vetted, man.
Yep.
Yeah, like, she's the real deal.
I'm embarrassed that I was making this call of, hey, can we just get a pass on? She's
right.
She's
Give
good.
her a pass.
And my friends at Antioch and leadership said, yeah, no, we want her to be a part of our community. And I'm going, I just want her in your program, man. Just get her in the program. And so right. So they introduced her to the gal that's going to be discipling her. She's 86 years old. She was one of the founders of that first Bible study that they started at the inception. And this woman poured into my girl, and it was overwhelming. It was absolutely. This isn't even the school of discipleship. This is the church making disciples. And so she, within 3-4 months, her discipler said, hey, you're walking and you need to be discipling people. And so God gave her 2 people to disciple. She's still not in the school of discipleship. But she now has this meeting with 2 girls a week, and she's discipling. She gets in the school, and what I just outlined for you continued on. She continued to make disciples that they then in turn made disciples, going back to mobilizing Gen Z. I don't think it's complicated. I think when Jesus said to go into all the world, and the verb isn't going, but it's to make disciples. I believe that the verb is making disciples. And I think if you want to see Gen Z stand up the kingdom of God on planet Earth in our generation, let's make disciples. It's not complicated. And that you got people that are in love with Jesus, and they just want to be doing whatever Jesus is doing because of their friendship. My 2 kids that have been through discipleship are still making disciples, even though they're not in a program. They're still mobilizing without me saying, hey, do you guys want to go? But I've just seen that when God can capture somebody's heart, and I think Gen Z's got a zeal to it that I think they really want to belong to something of significance. And I've never seen a generation that has kind of a thin view of what this world can offer, and them just wanting more substance and significance. So that's it. And I hope I'm not oversimplifying it with a lot of words, is that, man, if they just fall in love with Jesus and can be discipled and show Acts 1:1, Curtis.
Yeah.
Theophilus recorded all that Jesus did and taught.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jesus is right, Ron? I mean, he did.
Yes, that's so good. Right on. And we're believing the same, Clint, and seeing hints of it already. And it's easy now that I'm old. It's easy to all my friends and I. It's easy to complain about every generation that's behind you, But the reality is, we need to be on our knees, crying out for this generation that they would have that. And you just convicted my heart. I mean, we need to be discipling them. We need to be encouraging them. I've been shocked at how many young men treat me with such respect just because I've got a gray beard, and I think, man, Lord, thank you for the opportunity to speak into these lives, because I don't consider myself old, but the fact is I am. So, but it's exciting days. God is moving in this generation, and we want to be a part of that. We want to be a part of His plan to do it. So thanks for that encouraging word, man.
Yeah. Well, Clint, thank you, man. I think this has been enlightening for us to hear your heart. I feel like we could talk all day, but we don't want to do that. So, want to thank you again for just giving some of your time and expertise. Really honored to have you.
Yes.
And pray for us. We're wanting to be where Jesus wants us to be. We want to be acting like He wants us to act. And so thank you for coming on.
Yes, man. And thank you for those many years of investment in missions, and your continued investment, I know, through your children and many other things. That's a beautiful picture when your next generation is seeking the Lord and seeking to disciple and going and doing. It's beautiful, and it's a great testimony, and we're just thankful. So we look forward to talking more and partnering where we can, Clint. So God bless you.
Yeah.
Well, this has been the Edge of the Map podcast. We thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on the Edge of the Map. Every episode is just a small window into what God is doing through missional leaders who are taking the gospel into places most of us will never step foot. And at Go International, we're doing whatever it takes to walk with those leaders and help plant the church where it isn't yet. We want to invite you to be a part of that story. You can join a trip and experience the Edge firsthand. You can help send others through your support. Or you can fuel and fund the mission by supporting our programs, projects, and the people that carry the gospel further. Visit gointernational.org to learn more. Until all have heard, we go.